My name is Saoirse, and this happened a few summers ago. I was 13 and hanging out with my best friend Kat. Where she lives, there's a lot of forest, so we decided to go exploring. We walked along a very long path leading into the woods before turning off the path through some trees. At this point, there was nothing more than a thin muddy path surrounded by trees, which we walked along for 10 minutes until we were at the top of the hill leading downwards into the center of the forest. It was about 5 meters wide and 10 down, and rather steep. It had been raining the previous day, so the hill was slippery, but Kate and I climbed down it several times in the past, so this didn't bother us. At the bottom of this hill, there was a small oval-shaped clearing surrounded by thick trees and bushes, and I noticed the soggy remains of a campfire at the base. I was the cautious one, and was only about a meter down or so, while Kat was nearly at the bottom when I noticed them. I heard rustling in the leaves, and since it wasn't at all windy, I scanned the trees. Peering out of the bushes, barely a few meters past the clearing, were 5 hooded figures in masks, not moving, just watching. "Kat," I said, trying to sound brave and tough, but it was more like a shaky cry. "What?" she said, sounding slightly annoyed. Unlike her, I was way more careful and aware of my surroundings. I told her I thought I was having an asthma attack. I have bad asthma, so this alarmed her, so she jumped to the base, walked back a few steps, and ran up the hill. I returned to the top of the hill and took out my inhaler, puffing on it as we walked away from the hill. "Are you okay?" she asked. I pulled out my phone and on the notes section typed out, "Kat, there were people in masks down there." At first she scoffed and called me paranoid, but I was determined to prove to her that I wasn't just being a scaredy cat. We walked back a bit and scanned the bottom. They'd stood up by now, and one of them was spying from behind the first tree at the bottom. Kat has really tan skin, while I'm pale, and for the first time in my life, we were almost the same color. She dragged me back through the trees as we ran off frantically, only stopping once when I actually needed my inhaler. We haven't returned to that area of the woods since, as neither of us want to know what would have happened if I hadn't seen them sitting there. This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. Here's a story told from a stalker's perspective, if you could even call what I did being a stalker. I've done a lot of things because of my emotions. It's not easy for me to help my anger, and it's driven me to actually stab somebody to the point of them bleeding. Thankfully they were a friend and they never pressed charges. But the worst thing I've done was stalked somebody. It was my ex-boyfriend. As mentioned before, my emotions don't get controlled well, and when my ex-boyfriend broke up with me for somebody else, the heartbreak and anger got to be too much. At first I'd just send him pictures of me self-harming, until I threatened to kill his dog and leave his decapitated head in his room, burn his house down with his family inside, and lots more. But they were just threats, until I got the idea of leaving dead animals and random organs at his house. Being from a family that hunts, it wasn't hard for me to get a goose heart or entrails from any other animal in the area. What I would do is put them in boxes and send them to him. I still loved him, and I wanted to show him what I would do if it was legal. As well as the organs, I'd leave needles sticking up in his yard for him and his sisters to step on when they went outside barefoot. Needless to say, my point got across. This went on for only about a month until legal action was taken. I never went to jail, but they do have a restraining order against me and I have to do community service. I'm now getting better help for my emotions too. This story was submitted by Anthony. This is a Home Alone experience I had not too long ago. A little bit of background. I was 15 at the time and average size. I was about 5'7" and 150 pounds. I also ran track and played baseball, so I was pretty athletic. However, I was also very easy to scare, and my siblings would often play pranks on me, and I'd jump at any noise I would hear when I was alone. I also have an old dog. She's 9 years old, which is old for a boxer, and she barks at nothing. Sometimes it freaks me out, but I've learned to ignore it and pass it off as nothing. Also, I live in a cul-de-sac, and behind my house is miles of woods. We had 2 entries to our house, a sliding glass door from our deck, and an old rickety door on the side of our house. The window on this door was actually broken, and we had to put a piece of wood on there just as a replacement. From the glass door you could see the woods that surrounded our house, and it was very creepy at night and in the morning because of the thick fog. We never locked our doors because our neighborhood was relatively safe and crime-free, despite my uncanny fear of someone coming to rob our house. One night my parents went to pick up my brothers at their football game. I was home alone and it was around 9 p.m., so I decided I'd play some Call of Duty on my PS4 with my friends. I had one of those expensive headsets that I had just gotten for my birthday that blocks out all of the noise, so you can focus completely on the gameplay. I had been playing for about 20 minutes when I hear my dog barking. I paid no attention as she always barked at nothing. However, when I heard the wood on the door being messed with, I thought it was my mom and checked out the window to see if her car was there, but there were no cars in the driveway. My heart began to race and I broke into a cold sweat. I was horrified when I heard the door swing open, and my dog began to viciously snarl and growl at whatever it was. I had never heard her bark like that. Even though every nerve in my body was holding me back, I went to investigate. I slowly made my way outside and turned my phone's flashlight on and searched the driveway. I found nothing there, but decided to check around the house. I found nothing, but that's not surprising as I didn't want to be out there and searched as quickly as possible. I called my mom and asked her if my friend Tom could come over and stay because I was on edge. She agreed, and I told him over our PlayStation party chat to ask his parents, and he arrived shortly after. My mom then called and said she got stuck in traffic and wouldn't be home for another hour or so. Tom and I sat around talking about baseball and the latest gossip at school, when he said, "Dude, what the fuck is your dog barking at?" "Oh, she does that all the time. It's usually nothing, but if you want to check, we can." Lola, my boxer, was sitting right in front of the basement door and was acting the same as she did before when the door was opened. Tom said, "Nuh-uh, dude. Give me a knife or some shit if you want me going down there." "Stop being such a wuss. There's nothing down there except for my dad's weights," I replied. We opened the basement door and hurried down the stairs. I was looking at one end of the basement while Tom was at the other. I heard him say, "Dude, who the fuck is this?" And I quickly turned. To my horror, there was a strange man about 6'3" and overweight, and he looked disgusting with a messy shirt and a stained beard. The man grabbed Tom and started quickly running up the stairs with him, Tom's screams echoing off the walls as he ran. I quickly chased after them, adding to the screaming. When I followed them outside, I saw 3 other men emerge from the bushes. They were all laughing and kept running towards the woods with Tom. I went and got my neighbor quickly, as he was like an uncle to me, and we began to search for Tom. We looked everywhere, and eventually called the police, who said they couldn't find anything and would continue the search throughout the week. Months passed, and I was devastated. I kept thinking it was my fault, and Tom had never shown up. Not a single trace of him was ever found. A few weeks later, my brother and I were walking my dog when we heard bushes rustling from the woods. A few seconds later, we heard someone scream, "Help! Someone please help!" And then some more unexplainable rustling. Till this day, I still believe that the scream was Tom, and I am still shocked that this happened, and I will never feel less guilty. This story was submitted by Skylar. The other day I was walking across the street on my break at work. I was stressed out from a very rude customer who I was serving and needed an energy drink. It was around 4:45 a.m. when I started to cross the street to get the energy drink from a 24-hour convenience store across the street from the restaurant I work at. The area I live in isn't the best, but I have been there, done that, and I felt a good trust in the area, and it was literally right across a major street. though it was empty as it was 4 a.m. I'm a 5'1" tall female with dark hair and a firecracker type attitude. I was taken aback when I was grabbed by the wrist as I started walking across the road. It was the rude, half-drunk asshole I had been dealing with. He said he wanted to apologize, but I wasn't feeling it. I told him to fuck off as I shook his hand from my arm. I could feel him following me from behind, and I held my breath and rolled my eyes as I approached the gas station, the guy following in behind me. Smiling at the usual night shift guy, he gave me a wave as I looked over the shelves. I grabbed my drink and I walked back to the register. "Looks like you got a secret admirer, baby doll," Antoine joked with me. I said back to him, "More like a pain in my ass. He just gave me a hard time at the restaurant, now he's following me. Fucking crazy drunks, man." Antoine looked at me with a concerned look as he wished me a good night. As I walked back, I saw the guy staring at me from across the street, so I gave him the finger and watched him walk away in the other direction. About an hour later, at around 5:45, I was taking out the trash to the dumpster. I could hear a noise from behind the dumpster. Figuring it was just the sound of the door enclosing where the dumpster is, I thought nothing of it, until I felt a hand on my back and heard my name. It was the grill cook who was on at the same time, a 6'4" man. He put my last bag in the trash and urged me in as he put out his cigarette. "Stay in here," he said as he closed the door that locks automatically as it closes. I could hear yelling outside the back door and some running as my grill cook banged on the back door, having me let him back in. He told me he could see a man lurking behind the dumpster. He saw him while he was smoking a cigarette in the back while he was on the phone. He told me he looked like he had something in his hand, but he could be wrong. Either way, there was no way this guy was up to any good. We continued working until we got off work an hour later, and I haven't seen the creep since. This story was submitted by CTV186. I believe I was 15 at the time. I came home from school one day and I saw no cars in the driveway, so I knew my mom wasn't home. For sure I knew my dad wasn't there because my parents divorced when I was 11 and he lives in another city. In his place, my mom's been seeing other men at different periods of time, likely to fill that void my dad left. But in any case, she wasn't home and neither was my brother, so I decided to use this time to play on the desktop computer while no one was there to check on me, since I didn't have a laptop at the time. Sometime later, I hear footsteps upstairs and I freeze. Thinking there was an intruder in the house, and that I was lucky this guy didn't hear me enter the house earlier, I quietly crept over to the kitchen and took out the largest butcher knife I could find in case I ran into our surprise visitor. I thought about going upstairs to get the drop on the guy since I could hear relatively what room he'd be in, but I thought not to try at the moment, remembering how creaky my stairs were, which would take the element of surprise from me. Instead, I went to a corner in the backyard and called my mom to inform her of who I thought was an intruder in the house. I explained I was armed and ready to maim or kill the guy creeping around upstairs if it came down to it, and asked her whether or not I should call the police. My mom tells me Mr. Smith is staying upstairs that day, and was probably asleep at the time I got home, and he's not an intruder. I relax in relief, hang up, and put the knife back where I got it. Yes, I almost killed my mom's boyfriend at the time. I'm 22 now, and sometimes wonder if I had not checked with my mom, would I have dealt a fatal blow? If it indeed was a home invader in the house, would I be in juvie for first-degree murder? And if I accidentally maimed or killed my mom's boyfriend thinking it was an intruder, how different would our family life be right now? If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. I hope everyone had an awesome weekend, and I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Bree and Kenny, as well as Stephanie Waffle on Twitter. What's up? I appreciate everyone's support, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.